The 80s had the General. The 90s had John Gilligan. In the noughties, it was the reign of Martin Marlowe Hyland. His was a familiar path with success and power, and then the recklessness. He had to go, because with him, an innocent young man doing an honest day's work died. Crime World presents Caught in the Crossfire, the unsolved murders of coke kingpin Marlowe Hyland and innocent Anthony Campbell. Available now on all podcast platforms. Do you know what? I think the Sinaloa Cartel and the likes of them, the Kinahan Network and everyone else could do with this personal profile of every member. Maybe they already have one.
Let's save it till.
What do you think?
Let's save it till we get to the recording. Let's not.
We're recording, dear. We're recording.
Are we recording already? Are we?
It's just one of the things I had to do because you don't really apparently like kind of things being sprung on you.
According to my... Well, are you going to explain the context?
I am.
Okay.
So you went to a management course.
Yeah. So basically, in order to improve, because some people can be quite difficult to manage that you may be in charge of, who may not respect your authority automatically, who may...
Like who?
Could be any number of people, but we get sent on management courses, and as part of that you have to answer these psychometric tests where a lot of multiple choice options. Went on for about half an hour, answering questions, like when I try and think of one, like, do you find work, do you agree with, do you like things ordered or not ordered, or various questions like that, and then they come up with an extensive psychological profile.
Extensive profile.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, of course, mine is being handed around the office. I'd like to point out other people.
I mean, I didn't steal it.
No.
You did give it to me, and I was able to go through it.
Other people have been like protecting it in case it gets seen and all of that, but nonetheless.
So, page 1.
Yeah.
Niall seeks relationships which provide growth and development.
Yeah.
Building harmony, understanding, and common acceptance is a lifelong assignment for him.
It is. I think so.
He is reticent about conflict and can usually detect ahead of others when a disagreement is about to erupt.
For example, like if you had an awkward employee, you would be able, I would have an antenna to say this person must be placated at this moment because they're otherwise quite productive.
Your key strengths and weaknesses are pretty accurate, I have to say.
Yeah.
I don't know about the painstaking, conscientious, industrious. Painstaking is just, and then there's a comma after it. So you're painstaking.
Well, arguably.
Sensitive to the needs of others, respectful of others' needs.
Yeah.
And you look for harmony in every situation. You do tend to do that. I would call that fence sitting.
Would you? Yeah, but you would not qualify on that.
Now, your possible weaknesses.
Go on.
Of course, I'd pick out this one.
You would.
Ignores objective evidence which does not support his original perception.
Yeah.
I don't agree with this totally. Seems to lack drive or initiative when pressured. I don't agree with that.
No.
May unwillingly sacrifice his own needs for others.
Exactly.
Do you think you do that?
I actually do think that would be so. I think in a work context, if
reluctant to say no takes on too much too often, you do that.
Yes, definitely. If I end up overworking,
and then your value to the team, you're quiet.
Well, quiet.
Oh no, quite stable.
Quite stable.
Quite stable. It doesn't say that at all.
No, it doesn't.
It says brings quiet stability. Actually.
Oh yeah.
But that is a totally different thing, being quite stable.
It is.
That would be a massive insult.
Yeah.
You're a calming presence in conflict resolution. Blah-de-blah-de-blah, right?
Yeah. You're not interested in that. You're not interested in the positive aspects.
I've marked this page here because...
Okay. This is obviously...
I find this weird.
By the way, go on.
Communication. Mm-hmm. This is when communicating with Niall, and then in capitals, do not.
You know what do you not do?
All the things that I do, actually.
Well, basically.
Cut him short, discourage him when he wishes to share information, try to rush him. Exert unnecessary pressure, question his loyalties or genuine interest. I do all of those things, right?
Yeah.
Focus on his weaknesses or chastise him publicly.
Constantly.
Is that actually about me?
Yeah, just constantly.
But on we go through all this stuff I do to you, right?
Yeah.
put him on the spot in front of others.
On stage and everything.
But this one, what question did you answer and how did you answer it to get this? So when communicating with Niall, do not, in capitals,
go on,
touch him if you can avoid it.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, that's weird.
No, I mean,
that's like you have some sort of,
what,
aversion to human touch or something. Like, what does that mean?
But I didn't get asked a question,
Are you adverse
would you like people to touch you? A, yes, or B, no.
So how do they work that out about you?
I don't know. Like, it is
would
amazing.
Would you recoil if somebody in work touched you?
No.
Well, apparently.
Try it out.
Do not do this when communicating with Niall. That's what it says. A couple of other weird things as well.
Yeah. You've put a dog ear there for anybody who's just listening to it. Yeah.
Your opposite type.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't read that out. I am probably your opposite type, am I?
Yeah. Well, you probably, yeah. Well, there's not conflict adverse anyway, or
But there is a kind of, actually what you should do is go back and read this. How can you meet the needs of your opposite type?
Yeah. What would it be?
Show respect.
Yeah.
Hold your ground when attacked.
Yeah, well, you see, yeah.
Yeah. Do not, when dealing with your opposite type, you are not to try to control the conversation, wait for praise or recognition, argue or personalize the conversation, keep her in the dark, or she will do likewise. And then, in capitals, waffle, WAFFLE.
Yeah.
So you're not to do that.
But I don't, yeah, see, yeah.
You do that for a living, so that doesn't make any sense.
No.
Anyway, and then there's your suggestions of development. But my definite, and then there's all this colour coding. Yeah. But my absolute takeout from the whole thing is that do not touch. Like, that is just like, you should have a T-shirt on yours that says that, do not touch.
Now, I'd love to...
Throwing your personality profile on the floor there.
I would love to see you do that personality test as well. I don't know if you can fail the personality test totally, but...
Do you think I would?
No. I think it is actually interesting though, I suppose. Because,
some of it is definitely right.
Because you see, you do. Some of it is uncanny, right? Yeah. And I presume, because I was in a big group, maybe 15 people who did
of other people who didn't like to be touched?
No, 15 people who did the management course, but a lot of people found it a bit offensive, what they were told. Do you know what I mean? But you can see that people certainly in a work situation, some people are definitely conflict adverse. Did they have those little yellow men around you? No. No, but then there's other people like, certain people who enjoy a little set to with authority, don't they? Like who? Well, I won't name names because I'm conflict adverse. Everyone is different colours as well. No, they are interesting. No, they definitely got a lot of it right for you. Yeah. It's the boring stuff that I didn't read out. No. But I actually think that probably these criminal organisations have done that. Well, exactly. They've probably brought in consultants to kind of go through their management structures to see what way they can improve and can't. Well, I think what you're really going to see with criminal organisations, right, because they're not going to obey HR protocols, or you can't bring them to the WRC if they treat you badly, right? And at the head of them all are going to be people that are conflict people, dictatorial, and are very, want to tell people what to do. Now, they can't surround themselves with people like that. This would be according to this management training that, you have to have people with complementary skills. So somebody like, if you take example, Daniel Kinnan, or, sure he won't appreciate us throwing him in there. Like, he will have to surround himself in order for it to function with people that are, going to keep him happy, be able to, do what he can't do. Compliant yes men. I mean, not just compliant yes men, because those people will have to keep all the soldiers happy. Do you know what I mean? Because he might control with fear, Daniel Kinnan, for example, but he has to have other people to keep the team focused. This is according to the management training. Obviously, it didn't focus on the Kinnans. So he needs people of extreme natural loyalty who will also be able to, deal with the psychological issues that arise in his team. And like you do have to say, Sean McGovern seems to fit that profile, does he? Not very showy, not very, not very extroverted character. So he can't have another Daniel underneath him.
But I wonder, is Sean McGovern the cleverer one, because is he actually pulling the strings as a parent, sort of an underling, when in actual fact he does seem to be the one that makes a lot of the decisions and that has an absolute power actually over the boss.
Yeah, which is what they would say is in that management training, that although you have maybe somebody that's a certain type that's very, assertive and dictatorial at top, that the people, the greens like I am, can actually end up making more of the decisions.
Yeah.
Even if they don't want to appear or need to appear as if they're controlling.
Who's the power mad then?
Well, it's not that they're
power. The greens.
But in fact, what it shows is they actually need people in all organisations. You need people with these complementary traits, that you can't just have them. But you do see that a lot in organised crime groups. You have a very much a sort of showy, extroverted front man. And then the more that you go into it, they tend to have these kind of loyal sidekicks who really enact a lot of the stuff, So, yeah, I mean, maybe
I suppose they're, yeah. But look, I mean, they seem to operate on a corporate structure in many ways the same as the legitimate businesses. So I don't see why you couldn't sort of, I mean, what is this? This is a bit of a psychological profile after you've answered a few questions, I suppose. Yeah. And they're reliant on your answering
but
thing truthfully and reflecting upon yourself and your strengths and your weaknesses and your answers for the thing. I really would like to know why they are warning people.
There's other funny bits of it. That I'm a peacemaker all the time, and every now and again I have a wild explosion over Samad versus temporary.
You don't really.
No, but what I mean is, I suppose you can see you do see in these criminal organisations, like people like El Chapo or Daniel Kinnan or, the old mafia guys John Gotti, these real narcissistic types who put themselves out there, who enjoy the limelight. But always behind it, there has to, in order for an organisation to work, you need people with all these different types of skills,
A sneakier skill set, though.
Yes.
Within the criminal underworld, I mean.
Yes.
One, sort of an ambition that's hidden, that's quiet, that's waiting for an opportunity to take over.
It doesn't necessarily need even to take over. And you have seen those figures in the criminal underworld as well, who don't need to they don't need the appearance of being the top dog, but are happy to sort of stay in the...
But many of them, I mean, they get more opportunities than you do in the corporate world, because the chances of somebody getting jailed or shot are pretty high, unlike the corporate world, thank God.
Yes.
Anyway, we kind of have managed to get involved in the actual conversation we're going to have about the Sinaloa Cartel, and certainly we'll start off by talking about the latest in the investigation into the Kerry Crystal meth case, which has been back before the courts, and of course Tralee businessman Nathan McDonnell and his co-accused James Leen have appeared on video link. Now, we know that this case is moving to the Special Criminal Court. So it has moved, or it's moving?
It's the state have said they are going to apply to move it.
Okay.
So it hasn't formally gone there, but it's rarely something that doesn't succeed, I suppose.
So the Special Criminal Court obviously will give us a little bit more leeway once the case is there to talk a bit more around it. But for the moment, we will just stick to the evidence that's before the courts, because Nathan McDonnell in particular has repeatedly attempted to get bail.
Yeah.
And he has been refused it again and again.
Refused,
But his lawyers are pretty much saying they may go to the Supreme Court now.
Well, that's kind of the last avenue available to them. You go to the High Court first. If that's refused, which it was in his case, then he gets to go to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal upheld the decision not to grant him bail last week. As you said, it would be available for him to go to the Supreme Court, but of course, you wouldn't necessarily get legal aid for those those types of court challenges, and therefore you know there's a financial risk. I think.
Well, he hasn't had legal aid yet.
No, so there's a financial risk of going to appear in the Supreme Court, and also there's a waiting list as well before somebody gets to hear the Supreme Court. So there's very little point launching a court case if it's not going to come, in the relatively near future. And why he was turned down on appeal was the judges. So three judges sit in the Court of Appeal, and they said they agreed with the trial judge that there was a risk that he would abscond from bail, given a couple of issues. Number one, the international dimension to the allegations. Obviously, it's alleged that he's facing charges in relation to possession for sale and supply of crystal meth in Ireland, but the court has heard the allegations is that this was part of a criminal conspiracy involving international features, and therefore that increases the risk. Mr. McDonnell's father had offered to put up 100 grand as bail, as a surety. But the court said it wasn't sufficient to diminish the risk that he could leave. Now, that was strongly resisted by his lawyers, and they said that he was at the very least 2 steps removed from the criminal. The centre of the criminal conspiracy, and it said he is he has family ties here, and the idea that he would up and leave is unrealistic. However, the courts just
they've also said he has an unblemished record, and he's been in custody long enough at this stage. His solicitor Porrick O'Connell has said he's been under 23-hour lockdown, and that situation, the situation now is almost as bad.
Yeah.
This has gone on for too long, as far as we're concerned. He said there are clear messages from the state. Are they further charges on this, or is this a holding charge? Now, this is what he's asking. Of course, when these bail applications are made, it's useful to us on the outside to be able to get a little bit of an insight into what is actually happening as part of the investigation. So the court judges have been told that this is one of the biggest investigations of this type in the sort of the history of the state. So the lawyers are looking for, the state are looking for a further adjournment so they can prepare the book of evidence. There's criticism about how long it's taking for the book of evidence to be provided. And the reason the state say it's taking so long for this book of evidence to be provided is that this is such a vast investigation into 33 million euro worth of this crystal meth haul. They're talking about 200 pages before the Director of Public Prosecution, and that they're expecting the book back shortly, but it's not ready quite yet. Yeah,
this is the latest hearing. It actually wasn't to do with bail. It's just a kind of a mention.
So there's two things going on. There's the bails and there's the mentions.
Yeah, which is just the ongoing sort of housekeeping of the case, I suppose. And as anybody's been if anybody's ever been to court or been in court itself, I suppose, like the defendants have a right to see the book of evidence in advance of any trial. The book of evidence will give the full case put forward by the state, and they have an entitlement to get that promptly, and also, that the state can't keep them in prison for endlessly while they prepare a book of evidence. You'll hear, with reasonable regularity, cases, particularly in the district court, where if the state doesn't get that book of evidence quickly enough and present it to the defendant, the case can be thrown out. And that is what Mr. McDonnell and Mr. Leen's lawyers both said. They want, if the book isn't ready at the next hearing or a subsequent hearing, that there be a preemptory decision against the state, that because they're entitled to have justice done quickly, I suppose.
And of course, you hear these complaints in the north as well, where they can be sometimes 3 and 5 years in custody before the case is kind of ready to come up. So just for, a little bit of grounding on this, both McDonnell and Leen were arrested following the seizure of more than 500 kilos worth of methamphetamine in a container in Cork Port last February. So it's 4 months ago.
It's 4 months ago.
4 months ago. So, and it was alleged at that time that the drugs were hidden in a recycling machine that had been imported from Mexico and stored at Mr. McDonnell's garden centre before being transported to Cork, that it was destined for Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. McDonnell is accused of basically developing sort of fake invoices so that the shipment could be sent on, and it was claimed in a previous court hearing that he was to be paid $150,000 for his role. That's been denied, obviously, by his side. They've stated clearly that he was absolutely unaware that there was any drugs involved in any of these procedures.
So McDonnell is charged with possession of drugs for sale or supply, and that offence is alleged to have happened at the Ballyseedy Garden Centre between October 27th last and February 12th this year. Leen is charged with that and also with importation of the drug on October 16th last year. And the lawyers were told, may be facing further charges, whereas there was no indication during the court that McDonnell was going to be facing further charges as of yet. That's as much as we know.
That's as much as we know. We're getting, obviously, because of the high-profile nature of this case, you're getting these kind of regular updates because reporters are coming along to hear them. Often these mentioned dates, there can be any number of them before they go to trial. They're regularly not covered at all by journalists in other cases. So you're getting this kind of update, which is really the housekeeping of how these cases work. Once they get that book of evidence, then the defence has a right to build a defence. But obviously, certainly according to Mr. McDonnell, he's been, I think it was stated there that he was under 23-hour lockup for a long period of time. And that's obviously an onerous experience. So we'll keep updating it. I mean, I think it's, there has been if it goes to the Special Criminal Court, that the state have said they're going to make that application, that'll then go before a judge as well. And then a judge will decide if that is correct and the best route.
Now, in the meantime, earlier this month in Spain, the police there said they had dismantled a drug distribution network. They seized 1.8 tons of methamphetamine, which is the biggest seizure in Europe, I think, to date.
Yeah.
And this was the Sinaloa Cartel, which of course has links to the Kerry area because we know that there is an ongoing investigation into those links that Maurice O'Shea Salazar, who formerly lived in Killorglin, is currently on the run, believed to be in Mexico, wanted in Chile in connection with his role as a European distributor of Sinaloa drugs. But this seizure in Spain, which shows that drugs, thought this was quite interesting, that those drugs were actually for the European market.
Yeah.
They're not using Europe only as a springboard into Australia, where there is a huge, big population of methamphetamine users. But they're also now trying to flood the European continent with it. It's not a drug that has been used highly. It's certainly a street drug that can be bought here in this country as well as everywhere else. It's not vastly used.
No, I mean, it certainly isn't vastly used. You can see the levels of seizure in Europe are quite small. There's obviously other drugs that are equivalent, some of them sort of former head shop drugs. There have been large seizures in Ireland of that product. But methamphetamine, which of course is made famous, I suppose, by Breaking Bad, and the Sinaloa Cartel in particular diversified into crystal meth. During El Chapo's reign at the head of the cartel, as the cocaine trade became, an increasing focus for the US authorities, they diversified into two areas really, which was they always grew heroin and imported heroin into the US, but they moved into fentanyl and methamphetamine. And the value of that for the Sinaloa Cartel was they could cut out the Colombian cartels. The Sinaloa Cartel became the absolute experts, not just in the distribution of it, which is what they were doing with the cocaine, but in the production of it from a base level. And there was this huge amount of what they call the precursors to the drug being imported directly from China into Mexico. the Sinaloa Cartel were involved at every level. Then they were employing scientists to cook the drug and then bringing the drug into the US. So they really were getting these chemicals, pseudoephedrine and the like, and other ones from China. And it was just huge levels of profit. Now, the recent bust in Spain, you see, I think a Mexican national was arrested as well. So it's potentially the profits that they make from crystal meth are even greater than cocaine. And
Spain is at a great risk, really, of being a sort of a more international European hub for them because of the language, along with everything else, obviously.
But you see, there's two ways really these cartels work. They wholesale the drug at source to European cartels, who then get involved in the logistics of moving it across the Atlantic. But they also have these other routes where they have their own guys based in Europe, their own agents who then move it in and sell it at a higher rate, at a higher cost, obviously, when it's already
high-level salesmen, really.
High-level salesmen, and they also take charge of getting it into Europe.
That was kind of one of the warning signs that came out of the EncroChat hack and then has filtered into the Europol reports, which kind of give you an overview of what's happening across Europe and the drugs market. And also, they're quite good at giving you a pre-warning, even though by the time sometimes the reports are out, we're talking about them, it's nearly old news in them, but they have significantly homed in on what they've discovered to be Mexican cartel cell structures that are sort of bedding down in Europe, particularly in the Spanish region.
And in the Netherlands, and of course the great risk of all of this is the introduction of fentanyl. Fentanyl obviously is available in Europe, but whether it's been available in such a particularly structured way like it became available in the US, I don't think it's hit Europe in that way, has it? I don't think we've suffered that absolute wave that the US experienced. And fentanyl, again, I think the Sinaloa Cartel was suspected of being responsible for something like 70 or 80% of the fentanyl trade in the US. So there is obviously fentanyl has caused, it's brought down the mortality rate of the US as a nation. There's been that many overdoses and deaths. And I think that would be the big fear of policymakers in Europe, wouldn't it?
I think the EncroChat investigation proved that Maurice O'Shea Salazar was operating in Barcelona, out of Barcelona, that he was moving cocaine largely is what they picked up on the EncroChat network, but cocaine from the Sinaloa Cartel, landing it in a number of ports around Europe where they already had people bought off so they could just get it through the system. He had a full logistics operation going that involved quite a few Irish drivers and truck drivers who, who
knew what they were doing, I suppose.
Well, these guys transport anything once they have a truck. They don't care really whether they're transporting cocaine, methamphetamine or cigarettes. They are just smugglers essentially, and whatever's put in the back of their truck, they move it. But they had, that fingerprint of them there with O'Shea Salazar, weirdly from Kerry, sitting at the top of it, just shows that they're here quite a while.
Yeah.
When they start coming up in the Europol reports as being a problem, it means that, or a growing problem, it means that they really are embedded already.
Yeah.
So the likes of Sinaloa and other South American, Mexican cartels, no doubt, are dug deep within the criminal networks already in Europe.
Yeah.
So undoubtedly, there is a flow of fentanyl coming, if it isn't already here, and crystal meth. So it's a case of whether or not the tastes of drug users in Europe are different. It's always been seen that the tastes of drug users in Europe are different than those in Australasia, where there is this penchant by recreational users as well as addicted users for the likes of meth. We don't see recreational users really using that here. Meth can slip into to that polydrug use network, as has fentanyl.
Yeah.
In 2016, fentanyl did slip into that network here in Ireland, and it resulted in 6 hospitalisations of drug users. Other stuff has slipped into that. That poly drug user network is the street buyers,
Yeah.
really the poor people with addiction problems who will go out and they'll buy anything. The question would be whether or not that can grow into the recreational market, where cocaine is still by far and above the most popular drug there.
Yeah, and crystal meth, of course, there have been crystal meth seizures over the years and fentanyl effects, but the wave that hit America of both of those drugs hasn't come here yet. Like crystal meth, obviously in America was associated with kind of as a cheaper party drug alternative to cocaine, but the health effects of it are very, very severe, over a very much quicker period of time.
But it's the availability of it is the thing. And those substances haven't been so available yet in Europe. But in the States, it's the availability of it. A lot of people who've died from fentanyl even are people who don't want to buy it. It's just cut into cocaine. Exactly. It's cut into everything. They don't actually go out to buy it. It's just the whole sort of drug system, and particularly with recreational users, is so mixed up. I mean, they actually are providing in certain cities, testing kits that you can test. If you're trying to buy an E-tab, if you're trying to buy cocaine, whatever, that you can test it to see if there's any fentanyl in it, because it's just completely and utterly poisoned the whole recreational drug system.
And obviously then, if you want to get even more complicated, you can see why the levels of opioid use in America went sky high. And, there's been many series and documentaries about why that happened, but it's not all about evil drug dealers pushing it on people. Some of that was to do with how corporate America acted and allowed that or played a role in allowing that to happen.
But you put it all together and it is definitely a worrying threat for Europe and obviously ourselves as an island just off it, but yet feeding off the same drug networks and systems that mainland Europe is. But it's hard, to turn around and think that all these things that have occurred aren't a big looming threat. Yeah,
and I mean, it's the problem, of course, with the threats regarding drug use or drug epidemics are they tend to creep up on the population before we're aware of it, really, I suppose. And we saw that obviously with like heroin. We spoke about Eddie Hutch or whatever recently, but heroin wiped out a generation of people in the inner city in Dublin, and the effects of that are still being felt 40 years later or whatever it is now, So, we have to stay on top of it and be aware of it.
We do, and we shall certainly be coming back to it. Just had a thought through my adult brain there. Do you were kind of half wondering, about bottles of perfume and what
for your birthday,
for your birthday and everything. I think what would be sensible for both of us when I read that report on you is maybe if you got me one of those poking sticks.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, no, I thought you were going to say a birthday. I thought you were going to
I throw things at you.
I thought you were going to suggest I give you a birthday hug.
Oh God, no. Absolutely no. According to that report, you're not absolutely that you'd implode or you'd explode or something if I did that, or that if you did that. Could I throw things at you? Is that okay?
I think that's totally legitimate. Yeah, according to HR.
Okay, right. Well, look, and we'll consider maybe having me assessed as well. What do you think?
I think you'd break the machine.
Okay, thanks, Niall. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.